So good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of PCAN and UP Vargas Museum, I welcome you to this webinar titled Art as Postscript. We are all excited to learn more about Elisa Tan, about whom not much is known. So we welcome very much this incipient research, which makes Elisa not really a discovery, but more a revelation of an important talent that has not been properly represented, and also a revelation of the task of Philippine art history to catch a wider net and account for more names, more agents in the field, so to speak. I am also very happy to welcome the speaker of this webinar, Cristina Juan, and I'd like to introduce her. Maria Cristina Juan has an MA in Museum, Heritage, and Material Culture Studies from SOAS, University of London, and a PhD in Comparative Literature from UP Diliman. She's a member of the faculty at the SOAS School of Languages, Cultures, and Linguistics, and is the project head of Philippine Studies at SOAS, an interdisciplinary forum for Philippine-related teaching, research, and cultural production in the United Kingdom. The latter functions as a resource and networking hub as it creates avenues for sourcing and inscribing annotative knowledge from cultural originators in the Philippines. She has implemented several digital humanities projects, including the Mapping Philippine Material Cultural Project, launched in 2021, a global visual inventory of Philippine objects stored in overseas collections. So please help me welcome Professor Cristina Juan. So Cristina, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you for having me. Should I share my screen? My slides? Is that okay? Right, yeah. Thank you so much. Good afternoon. So let me begin with just a story. I met Elisa, I often call her Elisa, but her name is Elisa Tan. I met Elisa Tan in Baguio last December. She was a friend of mine, kind of thought that I'd be intrigued. This kind of virtually unknown who lived by herself in Baguio for almost 27 years. So in meeting her, I lasted well into the day, and I left with her promising to open up the 3 crates of art that she had packed and shipped from Paris almost 27 years ago, when I met her. Sadly, 5 days after we spoke, she passed away, and just a day shy of her 85th birthday. So, yeah, it was very sad for me. I was very, she left me sort of with an overwhelming sense of loss, that we did not get to work together. And I guess it also gave me a sense of renewed, sense of purpose to introduce her art and her work to the public, and the roster of Philippine women artists of her time. So Elisa left a significant amount of work and also a trove of documentary work of her practice. So with the permission of her estate and kind of the help of my son, who lives in Baguio, an art studies student in UP Diliman, we have been able to document and catalog the large amount of archival materials of her solo exhibits, her group shows, her notes and studies. From the time she graduated from UP Diliman in 1961 with a BFA in Fine Arts to her last solo show of art in Paris in 1995. So let me just begin with some biographical notes. She left a memoir, and these I've read through some of them and excerpted some of the work that she has there. So I've been given permission to use this. So I thank the estate actually to give me permission. So Elisa, or her Chinese name is Xiao Hua Tan, was born in January 8, 1937, and died in January 7, 2022. She was born in Shanqing village in Jinjing, China, South Fujian, China. But her family migrated to the Philippines in 1937. And when Eliza was barely a year old, so she grew up in La Loma, Quezon City, and graduated from FEU High School in 1954, which is sort of, I guess, a bilingual Chinese-English girls' school. Very early in life, she says that she had already begun to doodle, mostly according to her memoir, to remain sane, as she felt like their suicidal thoughts would often come up, and especially also after the early death of her father. So she continued to this inclination towards the arts, much to the chagrin, according to her, of her immigrant family, and enrolled at the University of the Philippines in Diliman to earn a BFA in Fine Art, graduating in 1961. This is a picture of the crate that she had left in her attic, which we were able to open. And these are some of the archive that she'd left behind, which we are cataloging. This is just her from the archives. This is just her degree, and from what we can see, she excelled in her studies at the UP, and I guess especially watercolor painting and different things, as well as Tagalog. So she was fluent in Tagalog, especially poetry. When after she had finished her degree in 1961, she started to look around for art residencies. And she left for the U.S. in 1964. She got a grant, a residency in Brooklyn, in New York, and later on she enrolled for a master's degree in Ohio University, which she finished in 1971. She also taught as an assistant curator or a teaching assistant at the art school at the University of Ohio. After this time, this is just one of the photos in the back. There's an intriguing name, Randy. We don't know who he is, but we're kind of thinking who this guy was. But anyway, this is in Provincetown, taken in June 1973. So at this point of her artwork, she did a lot of figurative works. So just the timeline of what she was doing, she started doing mostly large canvas paintings, which had some degree of recognition during her time in the U.S. So she did some of these. These are slides that were left in her archive. Sadly, these were not in the crates. So, but these are large format, and yeah. We don't know exactly where these were exhibited, but these were the types of paintings in the 70s, in her time in the US. So these are other works that from the slides that we were able to get. Okay, few more. So you could see kind of the beginnings of her going towards a bit more conceptual nature of her paintings in these double-sided things. But we don't see much of the conceptual nature of her art just yet while she was in the US. Here is another photo from Provincetown in the Fine Arts Work Center, where she exhibited along with a few other women. And while I guess from the work, she says that she's working a lot with white canvases at this point. It's interesting, however, that despite the fact that she had a lot of these kind of large-scale canvases with figurative, kind of slightly abstracted work, she had already began to look into the kind of recurring motif of the envelope. And you will see this over and over again. She would, for example, even if there was still some kind of element of figuration, I guess, in her work, she had already begun to use the idea of the envelope. And we'll see that she develops this kind of motif, this art practice, very much as she matures in her art practice. So this is, then she works a lot with these ideas of paper and painting paper materials. So this is a series of the apple series, but as you can see, these are in envelopes that she used. These, by the way, were in the crate, and we were able to exhibit it on the wall in Suelo, a village, in one of the houses there. And we just wanted to take a picture of it in series. No? But these are in Baguio at this moment. So I believe this would be kind of the earliest works, her large figurative works that are in Baguio. Anyway, after her work in the U.S., she got an invitation for a residency to go to Amsterdam at the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam. So she went across the Atlantic, I guess. She would often say that she was in Provincetown, Massachusetts, and she would often look, according to her memoir, across the Atlantic and wondered if she should travel to Europe. So from 1975, she moved to Paris and from Amsterdam, and then lived in Paris for 20 years. So it was in Paris where her art career and her intellectual efforts to merge word, image, and the everyday began to reach its sort of most sustained following. In Paris, she began with some figurative work. She had obviously kind of influenced by the kind of cosmopolitanism of Paris fashion and style at early years in Paris. And so these are just samples of some of her work, although you already see some kind of abstraction, but you can still see some kind of figures. These are other parts. So yeah, these are her early pieces in Paris, while in Paris. She also did her earlier pieces. She did some sequence photography, and this is from 1975, 76, where she has a sequence of 30 photographs that she arranged, telling the story of a plastic envelope. So this was how she had arranged it, these photos on that exhibit. These are just, so I do still have the 30 photos that she had exhibited, and it's, so this is kind of the travail of a plastic sheet. It's kind of interesting to see how it progresses, kind of at a narrative line, and then ends with this close-up view of a plastic sheet, at the very end, the 30th photo in the slide or in the sequence. After this kind of earlier kind of figurative works, she would begin to go more and more into something that she would call textual art. And she became mostly women artists. There was a feminist group that she worked with who dealt very much with which they called textual art. So or some call word art to her works. Huh? So here, the aesthetic design and the formation made language visible, and as an eminent. She, for example, showed with a group of women artists, where she in this show in 1975, where she let me just show you. By the way, she Diana Quinby, which I was able to contact, wrote her thesis based on the work that she did early on in 1975. I mean, 1975 on the women's artist movement in this show. So here this is Elisa, with what she would introduce in the first show in this feminist art group was a work she called the conjugation of the verb. And in this kind of word art, kind of performance art, she worked with the idea of conjugating the French or the word work, prefacing the work as being something that she did in a handbag factory where she worked for 9 hours in 1977. But we begin to see that word painting and other types of text-based art, she was kind of influenced by, I guess, kind of this movement where they introduced abstract expressionists, which slowly introducing content, but using text. I guess it's a reaction to sort of highbrow abstract art without any content. We know that she was influenced by Jasper Johns. She was looking at the way he introduced text content into his art, but also performative art. Also, we see in her archives that she would be influenced by, in the 70s, by Barbara Kruger and other women artists, which we know did a lot of work, for example, in her work on I Shop, Therefore I Am, work with Barbara Kruger. But in this, she basically sat down and typed this in her performance and exhibited the work in the show. I think that, oh, I didn't, anyway. So she would go on to work with this group. She especially very close to Marie Orenzans, who was from Argentina, and who also worked with a lot of text art or word art. And they would continue to collaborate until 1993, actually, and were very close friends. And Diana Quinby also wrote her thesis on Elisa as well as Marie Orenzans. This is a review of the work that she did on the conjugation of the word work. And here, Claude Torre, a very positive review of the way she had used them as parodic bricks of daily toil. Superimposed instances, same social discourse reduced to its lowest common denominator. Anyways, the motto was displayed on the wall in front of her, and she was typing, and then she would crumple the paper and put it in the bin and then continue to work. So it was kind of endurance art. Another type of sort of conceptual art that she was doing, but also again using text, was something she called the Nourishing Book. This was actually exhibited in first as a kind of private presentation in 1901, but then later on at the Pompidou in Paris. In this conceptual work, she did, she hired, or she worked with an artist. I haven't been able to trace his name, but what she did basically was bake biscuits and stamp them with words. And this is actually still in Baguio. She put it in a biscuit tin and very well preserved, actually. And so she, what they did was they presented it on stage, and then so then in the performance on stage, the male kind of actor artist ate the biscuit. So this sort of conceptual performances she was doing over her 20 years in Paris, but kind of superimposed on this kind of more kind of textual art, we always see this idea of the envelope, and she was very much obsessed with this idea of the envelope. So she would look at the word, she would often use it as the envelope as a metaphor for travel, for example. She's a container for distance, a container for thought. So she often used this trope. She even created huge canvases, no, of cut out like an envelope, and she would display this very big canvases on the wall, you know, with the words. So some of these other works, if you can, so in her memoir, she said part of the reason why she used a lot of envelopes was that canvas was very expensive, and she would use kind of administrative envelopes. She said in 3 sizes, and you still see a lot of in her crate of the envelopes that she worked on, and yeah, she would often put them in sequence again, where she would open the envelope and photograph them. So this is, for example, one piece she did. She did not give the name for this piece, but you can see kind of the way she uses the form. This is a better close-up, I guess, where she keeps repeating the words. But then, as you can see, as a visual field. Let me just go back in that one. So you, in her archive, you have probably about 200 envelope pieces, which you know, various different ways she treated the envelope. She exhibited them in various places. Here you see where she uses gouache, some watercolor, pen and ink, and then she would also use, this was the postscript work that she did, where she again infuses the form, the envelope form with words, no? And then some are more have more color, for example. But then again, there is always this idea of envelope. A few more of the envelope series. Yeah, there's a lot of these in the crate that she shipped. Some are purely on just color, while others again have text. Mostly, she works a lot with a repetition of text, and she, according to her, some of the work she's saying, it's to give muscle to the text, to the words, I guess, the repetition. These are some more of her envelope kind of text art. And this is, she was also at a certain point later on, in like 1990s, worked a lot with meditation and the Book of Changes and Buddhism. And so she did a lot of work with this sort of meditative repetition, you know, of words on text, on canvas. She also did this, she said she had a 7-year obsession with the word, I don't know, I'm not familiar with French. She and she was very much, she wrote a lot about heights of the and way it would slide. 7 years, 5, she would constantly think about the maybe and the should go back work, or she should go back to the Philippines. Or yeah, this is the French phrase that she was 7 years. She said fascination. But actually, I guess she said she would say it was translated as maybe or can be, and she was especially fascinated with a hyphen, no, which created a different kind of a meaning to the word. And so she was, she thought at this point, 7 years before she left Paris, actually, she was already going through a very kind of crisis of kind of her work, her art, and a spiritual crisis as well. So in this word, in her fascination with this word maybe or can be, she said she was trying to figure out whether she should go back to the Philippines, or she should leave Paris, or she should not do any more work any more art. Yeah, so she kept repeating this word. And you see this even in here, where but she uses the, you know, she colors it more or she puts it, but she did a lot of the same word. If you see on the words on the top. And here the same way she if you see a word here, she repeats the word and kind of the sliding in meaning that she kept obsessing about. But the work is beautiful. I mean I guess the just kind of the colors and the form is beautiful. And these works are actually in Baguio. So this was part of inside the crates that she packed. She uses the same thing. This is a huge canvas, which you can fold as like an envelope. And she did exhibit this in Paris. The same thing here. Again, the same word, maybe the peut-être word. Yeah, so the following are just shots that I was able to take of her work. There is some damage in some of her work from being like 27 years inside the crate, but some are pretty well preserved. So these are the big canvases on the floor. Those are some other of her works. The same thing. So these are, again, different versions of the same word that she. So she had several reviews of very positive reviews in Paris. A lot of some of her work was acquired by several institutions in Paris. Yeah, this is just a kind of translation of a review by Claude Dorval based on her work in 1991. Some more of her works, I guess. Sorry about that. This was an interesting one. This is a later work, actually. I wasn't sure, I couldn't date it very well, but this was the first sort of work that I saw that had some specific local reference to the Philippines. And I wish I was able to ask her about it, but still, it still uses the kind of the metaphor of the envelope and different things. Some more of her envelope art. This was the this was the in her studies of the work of the word maybe, and this is kind of the East and the West, and she was a very sort of cerebral artist in a way. She, in her note, she does a lot of kind of ruminations of her work, of kind of the theoretical kind of philosophical underpinnings of her work. So she would write a lot about her work in her diaries and her things. These are just some more of the photos of her work. And some photographs that I found of her. Anyway, so these are just, she has an extensive sort of resume, art resume. So from there, I can basically, although I didn't have as much time to really go through, but she just have acquisitions of her work from public institutions. One in the National Library in Paris, and then of course, and then several of her expositions she did, solo exhibits, and a long list of group exhibits. And yeah, so I guess I'll end there. I'll open questions. Let me just read what kind of she ended with. In 1985, Elisa did her last public show at the gallery in Eiffel Bra in Paris. And at this point, as a form, create any form of public art for her remaining years in Paris. She left Europe and moved to her ancestral village in China, for 8 months, but she said that she couldn't really live there anymore. But it was in China that she chanced upon a little church in the village, a Christian church, and she says that she was converted to sort of local evangelical Christian church in that. And then she moved from China to Baguio, where she lived kind of a largely solitary but very spiritual life. So in Baguio, she acquired a 3-story house from her kind of inheritance, and then became very involved in a local church. And in fact, when I was speaking with her, she was very much excited about kind of introducing her work, because as she was saying, all the proceeds, if there's any money that comes out of it, would go to her humanitarian projects that she has a lot of, actually working with the local church. So she works a lot with farmers and things. So anyway, so yeah, I just feel bad that I wasn't able to get to know her better, but hopefully this will kind of whet your appetite about her art and her work. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina, for this fascinating talk. Maybe we can have a brief discussion. Maybe you can also stop sharing.
Sure.
Yeah. And as I was working on an essay on Dominador Castañeda, a professor at the UP School of Fine Arts, I chanced upon a work of Elisa Tan. It is featured in a magazine in 1960. You mentioned that she graduated in 1961, right?
61, yeah.
From the UP School of Fine Arts. So maybe Gian, can we show that work? Her work, this one, the biggest.
The biggest one.
Yeah, the biggest one on the left side. It's by Elisa Tan, part of a feature of a magazine of the Young Moderns, I think, in 1960.
Oh, wow.
This is
60s.
I was so happy
cool.
to see this work, and maybe and also to link it up with your initial research on this. The Philippine period is quite absent in your research, right? The Philippine
yes,
period,
yes.
The period.
The Philippine period, definitely. Yeah. I did ask her, like, did you know any of the? No, she said her teacher was Hoya. Jose Hoya, and her close friend was Bing Chanko, and I looked her up, and yeah, she so she kind of said that they had kind of similar takes. I think Bing Chanko Labatik, she said, but I'm not really sure. Yeah, Labatik, yeah.
Okay,
but that's amazing. Oh, wow.
Anyway, it's we have to piece together what we have, no?
Yeah.
So maybe Gian, maybe we can stop sharing. So my first question, Christina, is what is the state of the archive in Baguio?
It's basically all over the place. I have tried to get some kind of archival boxes and tried to catalog, but there is a lot of work. As I was showing you the paintings in the last part of the series, some of it's not kind of well preserved, but it's, but the documents though are pretty kind of complete. But as you were saying, not from the Philippines. Maybe because when she left to the US and then from there to Paris and then she went back to Baguio, she had kind of not really gone back, to the Philippines and kind of the old works. She has a nephew in Quezon City now, but so maybe she has some remaining of her early works at her sort of ancestral home in Quezon City, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
And please continue. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but there are a lot of, you know, she has a lot of diary entries, a lot of kind of ruminations of her, of, of, of what these works meant to her and different things. She has a lot of notes on different artists. So you can kind of see her, the archive is important, I think, just to be able to give a timeline and kind of the development of her work. She did mention that she stayed with Nena Sagil because I asked her if she met her. And she said, yes, I stayed with her overnight in Paris. She stayed in her apartment up in the attic, she said. Or did she live up in a, she did, no, Patrick?
Some kind of like
Or
a
some,
third floor, or yeah, a bit of an
yeah.
attic. Mm.
Yeah, and she said that it was, she couldn't stay long, but although she was really nice, but she, both of them needed to be alone. She said, kind
Seems,
of. So I think she was a loner also, no? Si Nena, I think,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
or was she?
Yeah,
So she
although,
felt like,
but it's also interesting that you mentioned that at the twilight of her life, she devoted her time to the church, no? And Nena also turned to Jehovah's Witness in Paris,
in Paris.
also during her twilight years. So this
Yeah,
the
yeah,
spiritual turn is
yes,
quite
yeah,
shared by Nena and
yeah,
Elisa. So the other question,
yeah.
Paris years, Christina, what sustained her in Paris financially? How was she able to
Uh,
live in Paris? Yeah.
So actually, she said like the first. So she kept saying that a lot of her kind of sustenance was really from friends, especially from the feminist group that she was with.
Mm.
So they would support her. In fact, one of the friends there in that meant because her daughter, that friend's daughter, was away for university or something, so it was empty. So it was a kind of a series of friends helping her out. But she did say that she didn't have a lot of money in Paris. She was very minimal living. In fact, she said, kind of said that why she worked a lot with envelopes because it was very, you know, it was kind of cheap, and yes, so sometimes she wouldn't have money to buy canvas and things like that. And yeah, she did have like like sort of very close friends like Lorna Taylor, which I tried to, she's still alive and is kind of now a well-known artist in France. And then there's Marie Orenzans that she worked with even up to 1993, I think. Not sure if she's still alive, but then of course the kind of academics who wrote about her work. So they continued to actually write to each other, like Diana, up in until 2020. So Diana was able to, I was able to contact Diana, the one who wrote the thesis, and she said, yeah, she's really interesting. She's very happy that, you know, that she's getting some kind of intro to her, to her. She's
But the
very kind of
the feminist group,
philosophical.
the feminist group, Christina, in Paris, was composed of French women mainly, or a bit cosmopolitan in the composition?
It was actually very cosmopolitan. So Marie Orenzans was Argentinian, and then of course there was Elisa, and there was a woman from Africa, so they also did a show, that African Letters. So again, but they always worked with this feminist art movement. Actually, was very visual. They produced a magazine, and they you know, incorporated a lot of visual poetry, but also kind of text art. And I haven't been able to get a copy of the magazine. There are photos of, yeah, how they would lay out the magazine, and that's kind of the outlet for this feminist art movement. from the 70s to the 80s, I think.
What is,
yeah, but they were very visual.
what, yeah. What is the name of the group, Christina?
The group.
Like a name, or is just an informal?
No, there was a name. Let me see again. So Diana Kunbi wrote about it actually. Let me see.
This is
There was a
the
name.
movement, right? There is like women artists.
Yeah, this is the movement that. Yeah. Wait. Can't find the. Yeah, but it was definitely went with like an editor. English, it was a. Oh, actually, I'm not sure. Well, it was called the Women/Art Collective, founded by the psychoanalyst and painter Francois Hillet, one of several women artist groups created in Paris in 1970. About 30 artists were part of it, and they met regularly from 76 to 78 in order to call into question discrimination against women by Parisian galleries and museums.
Wow.
So it was, yeah, interesting, no? This thesis gives an account of the history and activities of one of these groups, and she does name it. It's called the Women/Art, Femme/Art, within the context of the feminist movement in the 1970s Parisian art world.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my next question has to do with the Philippines, Christina. Was there any kind of Philippine engagement while Elisa was in Paris? Some kind of maybe tours or through exhibitions?
She said she met David Medalla, but she never actually worked with him. I mean, and of course with Nena, it's interesting because I did ask her if, but she felt like, I guess, kind of the way her abstraction kind of, she didn't feel like she could work with the Philippine. She kind of wanted to be kind of a universal kind of take on. I mean, that was kind of her conception. Like she didn't want it to be so localized or seen as Philippine art in some sense. Like the only one that I saw really was that envelope with a Philippine flag inside it. But I'm not sure if that was even exhibited or if she had actually engaged with Philippine artists at that time.
And did she ever speak to her Chinese heritage? In her
she did. Yeah, she did actually use a lot of the concept of calligraphy as kind of a very kind of, like the idea of textual art or text as art kind of. So she talks about how in her tradition, I guess in the Chinese tradition, she uses kind of words in the same way, although it has, she says, more content. She puts in more content to it. And she says, of course, that, unlike the English language or the script, not much is done with kind of the actual writing of the text. So that's kind of the only thing. And then she did, from Paris, after her kind of spiritual dilemma, she went back, stayed in the village for 8 months, but then she felt like she couldn't really retire, or she couldn't really stay there in China, and felt like she had to go back to the Philippines. Yeah, but she never really tried to kind of do any exhibits, or expose her, because she did feel like she didn't want kind of the self-glory. She kept talking about not wanting to engage with the public after her sort of conversion. So that's why she kept her art and all her stuff in crates. No, she only opened it. It was only open after she had promised that she would open it for me, but then sadly she passed away, you know. So that's why the estate felt like they could do it, because she had said, yes, come back, and then we'll, you know, open the crates, and then we'll put up an exhibit. She was excited. It's like, oh, do you want to? Because I always felt like I had to be careful, because she didn't want to be kind of made a spectacle in a way. And she didn't, especially kind of really was against the idea of like commercial, making her art commercial, or, you know. So I kept asking her, like, would it be okay if we had an exhibit of your work and stuff? And she did say, as long as it was used for kind of her projects, which were, you know, for the farmers that she was working with and different things. So yeah. So yeah,
And
I don't feel like she engaged with the Philippine art scene, like after she had come back.
and would you say, can you say that the conceptual turn
Mm.
happened in Amsterdam with the Stedelijk Museum? Was it residency, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, she was invited to a residency, and that's why she went to Europe.
Mm.
Conceptual turn, I think it already kind of had a bit coming out, I think, in the States, with her kind of, you know, the use of the envelope already, but then there were still some kind of figuration in the kind of Apple series and different things. But I felt like she had already started to kind of philosophize more about kind of, and make abstracting more her things. But she was definitely a good, you know, like a kind of technically, she I mean, her large scale, she did gain some recognition with her, you know, her earlier large scale canvases and things.
Mhm.
Mm.
And, you mentioned Jasper Johns and Barbara
Mm.
Kruger
Yeah.
as a possible influence. What made you say that they were the influences?
She writes about them, like she has notes in her. I'm not sure if she was at, but I know that she'd read them, or kind of looked into them. She did a lot of kind of news clippings, art clippings, and then she would like make notes on them. And then so she also did a lot of John Cage, and kind of the idea of contrapuntal music. And so yeah, she has lots of notes on these things. And so that's how I feel like she had actually kind of really thought about her work. Like she had kind of a real kind of philosophical basis for what she was doing. She studied a lot, I think, on
And
concept in terms of her conceptual.
after UP, did she have further studies in the arts in
Yeah, she did an MA in fine arts in Ohio University.
Mm.
But that was it. Yeah, she did that one, and then she was like a teaching assistant in Ohio. Um, yeah, but you could see from her notes that she was very kind of, yeah, she liked to think about her art a lot and kind
and,
of study
and her notes, Christina, were in French or English?
English in
English.
English. Yeah.
Mm.
In fact, some of our interviews of her, and you can see that she did eventually learn French, but you know, you can see a lot of edits in her in the interview. So it wasn't like she was very comfortable with the language. And you could say also that, you know, that was part of her obsession, was kind of the repetition of words and kind of learning the words, like she was saying, to explore language is to explore a different world, or something. So yeah, but she did kind of, she did couldn't, I guess, wrote in French, or maybe it was translated. But yeah, she says a lot about the difficulty of the language.
Mm.
Yeah.
And in terms of exhibition history, Christina, did she exhibit extensively in Paris?
Yes, she did. She has in her paper, she has a list of um, I think there were about, I could double check, but she definitely had at least one, two, at least 15 solo exhibits in Paris, and then a lot more in group exhibits. She lists it down actually, thankfully, in a kind of a long resume in her documents in her archive.
And
So we could,
yeah, the 15
yeah.
shows are individual exhibitions, right?
Yes, solo. It says, yeah, exposition individuals.
Okay.
Yes. So there was some in Ohio. Well, she lists down in Ohio, in Provincetown, she did individual solo exhibit. There was one in Paris in 76, a gallery. Yeah, several galleries in Paris. Yeah.
Did she
Virginie,
did she exhibit Christina in one gallery in Paris or in several galleries?
it seemed like several galleries, but there she kept on going to a gallery entry temps.
Mm.
A specific gallery is always listed in her resume as a gallery that she exhibited in about maybe 5 times. But
Antrata.
some of her performances, yeah, yeah. So she has like 4 in that gallery solo exhibit. I'm not sure if she had like a curator or a specific curator, but yeah.
You found one piece of criticism, right, on her by a French
There were
critic.
several actually. Yeah, there were some. Yeah, there were several that. Well, there were 4 sort of criticisms of her, mostly positive. Some were very short.
Mm.
There's some letters of like congratulations that kind of kind of like acquisition letters that said like they've acquired this piece from her, and it was kind of like a confirmation of the acquisition. Yeah, but yeah, she has clippings of the reviews, and then also I guess also from the thesis, from Diana. And
Also, her work was collected by institutions, right?
yes,
Mm.
yes. So there's one in Florida, there's one in Spain, there's a museum in Spain, and this was one of her text art. There's there's a Sackner Archive of Concrete and Visual Poetry in Florida, and then there's the foundation in Paris, in France, and then there's one in the National Library in Paris.
In Paris.
I'm not sure. There's also, there were 3 that were acquired by the National Contemporary Art in Paris. The Foundation for National Contemporary Art in Paris. Her work acquired in 1981, 83, and 85.
Mm-hmm.
So that's there, I guess.
In terms of the proportion of the work,
so I guess she was pretty. I mean, Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But in terms of the proportion of the work, Christina, do you think the visual poetry is the main part of the work?
Mm-hmm. I would think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because maybe not even. Yeah, I would think so. Although she did have a lot of sort of performance art, not like just paintings or kind of 2D art. So she did a lot of those kind of like the Nourishing Book, for example. But they always had words in them. Like she always played around with words, even in the performance arts. Even the one where she was typing, the conjugation of the word to work. So she always dealt with text in some sense. So that seemed to be kind of kind of.
And the performances, Christina, were documented too. Are they in the archive?
Yes, yeah, there are lots of photographs of her, like sequence photographs, as well as kind of the program and the different things. So yeah, in fact, she actually wanted to recreate that performance piece. She said, like, you know, when I came back after I went down to Manila, she said, I really want to recreate that piece, the biscuit. And the biscuits are still there back here,
That
where
is
she stamped them with words. Yeah. Yeah, but there she has a lot of photographs of those, of that performance piece. And it was done twice, I think, kind of like a preliminary thing. And then it was at the Pompidou where it was performed on stage.
mm-hmm.
Uh, the Nourishing Book, she called it.
The Nourishing Book, no?
Mm-hmm.
And the
Of course,
performances are described by her in the archive, Christina, or just photograph?
Yes, yeah, she does actually describe it in her notes.
Mm.
And then she gives kind of the recipe for the biscuit that she makes, and then she baked it in the oven, and then she stamped it with a thing, and then she bound it in kind of thing. And so she writes all of that down, and then there is sort of a script for the performer, who was a male performer. He sat on the stage, and then he opened the book, and then says to eat the book, and things. Yeah, so it is pretty. It's fairly well documented.
Yeah. My last question, Christina, is what's next for this initiative of yours? Moving forward, what do you do with the archive or around the archive?
I don't really know, Patrick. I was just kind of, I just felt really bad that she had passed away before she was very excited to kind of, you know, although of course with the caveat that she always said, like, you know, I just hope that, because she was very spiritual. She really didn't want to kind of do it for anything, for any, yeah. But yeah, I think, I'm not sure if what, maybe a book or an exhibit of her work. I think I do think there'd be enough of her work for a small exhibit from the ones that are in Baguio now. Yeah.
The large scale works that you showed early in the PowerPoint, are they in Baguio?
No,
Oh,
those are all yeah, only in slides.
Okay.
The only ones that, yeah, those were all in slides. And those were the ones, I think, in the US. Yeah, they were in the US. I tried to look for those in the crates, but no. The only ones there are the latter works with the maybe, the word, the put works. Yes, that there's a lot.
And also the 200 envelopes, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Those are, yeah, they're kind of fascinating because they're all like folded up, and then you open them and then you see them. So a lot of them are a little dark, some with the eyes and things, but also some are really just, she did say she was very obsessive compulsive in some sense with her repetition, but some of it are really, really interesting to look at.
And the envelopes are used envelopes, Christina? Used envelopes. Mm-hmm. Are they used envelopes, or they like new envelopes? Are they used, or?
No, yeah, because they were new envelopes.
New envelopes, okay.
Because there are still in the crate some ones that she didn't use. But what she did say that when she would get one and she would open it, and then but sometimes it would rip a little, but she would work around the rip, for example. So she wouldn't necessarily discard something as even if it had a defect, because she would open them up, right? And then, you know, sometimes the glue would stick, she would like work around that piece. And then some of the canvases that she made into kind of an envelope, like huge, no, very big canvas. She would fold into an kind of an envelope structure, and then in the exhibit, she would you would open it when you. That's how she would exhibit it, like this act of opening the envelope.
Okay, so this is also the question of Reinhard Magdaong. He says, weird question, were the envelopes in her series actually reused or recycled? So I think that's how you answer it, right? They were more.
There are very many more. Yeah, there are many. Yeah, sorry.
So they're fairly new envelopes, right?
Yeah, they were.
Yeah. And then, because I was also thinking of the Manila envelope, no?
True.
But this is not the Manila envelope, right? The Manila
no,
envelope.
It's not.
It's the letter, right?
It's different shape. She said were called administrative envelopes. I'm not sure if that's specific to Paris, but there are empty ones that are still there that haven't been opened up and worked on. So I actually have to look at that and see if they're French brand or something. But it's not matte.
And she paints she paints the inside, right? Not the exterior.
Yes. She paints the inside.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe last question before we end. Who's taking care of the archive in Baguio?
So when she died, she in her will she had given all her property to the church that she was a member of. So now the church it's the estate. I mean, takes care of the estate.
Okay.
The church. I can't remember it's a local evangelical church in Baguio. But you know, they know that she really wanted to do an exhibit or something. So she also so the house, for example, is now in the estate, and I guess they're going to try to make a part of the room as like an exhibit room for her work.
Okay. In the church.
And then but it's not a church now. Like now it's kind of like a halfway house for people live, like an artist is living there and things. But it's now the property of the church. All her artwork and all her archives.
Okay.
She does have a nephew in Manila, in Quezon City, I think, but because the will says that it's all of it is she's giving to the church. So
okay. And
they've agreed to
what does Y stand for, Christina? Elisa Y Tan, right?
Elisa, wait, Y is it you? She's given she has a Chinese name. Is it you? I think it's you.
I remember,
Yeah, you.
Okay, so maybe final words from you, Christina, maybe your reflection on this task that you carried out, and I mean, reflection in terms of the logistics of it, as well as the philosophical or maybe methodological, disciplinal aspects of it.
It's just, I'm just kind of very thankful for this opportunity, I guess, to be able to kind of have an outlet for kind of introducing her work. I know there's still a lot of kind of archival work, cataloging work that needs to be done, and hopefully, just to be able to really get a sense of kind of her contribution to Philippine women art, especially at that period. And yeah, it's my hope that somehow her name or her legacy can be reintroduced to the kind of the constellation of Philippine women kind of artists at that period.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how that will be done, but yeah.
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 Dagdagang salamat, Christina. Thank you very
Yeah.
much on behalf of
Yes.
PCAN Vargas Museum. I'd like to thank you for making the time and also sharing your research on Elisa. I am sure this is only the beginning of the interest in Elisa and other artists who maybe have fallen through the cracks, no, of art history.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
continuing everyday task to
Yes, yeah.
cover and also reacquaint ourselves with new names
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
field. So thank you,
Yeah.
Christina. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah, I was just really surprised to meet her, you know. Parang I've never heard of her really. Like I wasn't even aware of it, you know.
yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway,
But thank
thank
you very
you.
much, Patrick, for this.
Thank you, Christina. Yeah, it's our honor. And
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah.
everyone for coming, those in the Zoom room and also on Facebook. So good afternoon to everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.